I will always hate losing to the Yankees. This is Corey, and this is the Anthem podcast.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Rob. Welcome to episode 267 of the O The Anthem podcast. And today I learned Corey is shadow banned on Twitter.
Not for real. I just think it's the app. The app's like him.
Yeah, sure.
A little
just
screwy.
the app.
Yeah.
Who knows what you were talking about to get shadow banned?
On all my accounts simultaneously.
Thank you for joining us for episode 267. Again, we're broadcasting to you from the hashtag OTA LA studios, high above the 110 freeway in beautiful downtown Los Angeles. And again, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for listening on whatever podcatcher you listen to our podcast on, whether it's Apple or Google or Spotify or Stitcher or Pocket Cast or anything like that. We appreciate all the love, all the listens. And if you can rate and review the podcast, that would be great. Or tell people.
Yep. And of course, you can always find us on Anchor now. That's our new home over on Anchor. No,
not quite.
Not yet. Oh, you can read, you can listen to Corey's podcast over on Anchor.
Yeah. And then ours is coming over shortly.
Very soon it'll be on Anchor.
As soon as we're done with this whole website nonsense.
Yes. I forgot to do that this week. Anyway, you can find more O The Anthem at O The Anthem on Twitter and Instagram. You're watching right now at facebook.com/O The Anthem. You can find, of course, all of our video at youtube.com/O The Anthem. And everything O The Anthem related is still over at OTheAnthem.com. Corey's listening to our podcast live. Hey, welcome to that. What's up?
You know, what's funny is I have this wonderful dial.
Yeah.
That will do things for me. Mm-hmm. Like I have it right now set to tab scroll, but then every once in a while it just decides like, I don't want to do what Corey wants me to do anymore. I'm gonna change this to the volume instead. So there we go.
Well, so we got a lot to talk about today. And as I said in the description, we're going to talk a lot about Baltimore, but let's take a trip about 1,000 miles south from there and about 100 years back in time down to the great the state that exists.
The legally required to be called a state.
One of the 50, at least until the Great War begins again, Alabama. Now, of course, you all probably paid attention to last week's episode 266, where we talked about Georgia and how we never want to travel there again, and how we don't really want our favorite shows to be based in Georgia anymore. Well, Alabama said, hey, Georgia, you really fucked up and got the attention of the whole world.
Hold my beer.
Hold my beer. We're going to double down because, as we talked about last week, Georgia has a really repressive abortion law that they just passed on the books. Now, of course, not law, passed, signed by the governor. And as most laws at the state level, it takes a little time to go into effect. Yeah. And Alabama had time to just cut the knees right out from under the Georgia law and say, everything you can do, we can do better. And they made a 100% abortion ban in Alabama.
Well, to be fair, I guess to the way that the people who wrote this law decided to frame it.
Sure, yeah.
It's not
to be fair to them. Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's not an abortion ban.
Okay, yeah. Right.
It's just throwing people who perform the abortions in jail. Right. So there's no punishing the mother here per se, or no problem with getting the abortion other than the fact that the doctor who does it could spend up to 99 years in jail for doing that.
Right. Yeah.
And there is so I think last week when we were talking about Georgia, there was a lot of me trying to because we like to try and take like differing sides on opinions even if we don't agree on them, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So even though I don't agree with what the Georgia bill was doing, I felt like I was trying to at least take it from the perspective a little bit more of somebody who might be on the right side of this issue than the left. And I think that this Alabama law makes that nearly impossible for a reasonable person to do. Because I mean, like, if you were to take the Georgia law, which we all agree is pretty terrible, and said, well, we're just limiting it to 6 weeks because that's the point where the heart beats. So that's the point where life begins, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. That's the point. Yeah. You can make the arguments from a pro-lifer side of this argument. The sending abortion doctors to jail longer than somebody who commits rape.
Wait.
Like that seems outrageously excessive. And the fact that there is no exemptions for rape or incest or health of the mother in this Alabama law is barbaric.
Yeah.
I mean, like
for a couple of clarifications. First of all,
I mean, a 12-year-old girl who gets raped in Alabama might have to carry that child to term because there's no abortion doctor who can perform the abortion because they might go to jail for longer than the person who raped the 12-year-old girl if they perform it.
But let's be fair.
After the law passes, if it was all not challenged in court and blah, blah, blah.
Let's be fair. First of all, it makes providing an abortion a Class A felony, which is minimum of 10 years, maximum of 99 years.
Yeah.
Now, that is the same penalty as you get for rape in Alabama. So to say that you do less time than the rapist isn't exactly fair. Now, the average sentence for a rapist in Alabama is 10 years, and they serve 5. So generally speaking, a rapist will get the minimum, and they'll serve less than the minimum, and then get out on probation. Now, I do agree that the likelihood that the first and probably the first many doctors who would be charged under this law would get the minimum, probably low. Probably very low. But it is the same class of felony as a rapist. So it's not more punishment. It's the same punishment. So to be clear, a doctor who provides an abortion for a teenage girl who was raped by her uncle gets the same penalty as the uncle who raped their 12-year-old niece.
Yeah.
So I just want to be fair in the way that we characterize
not say
this
that
law.
Guaranteed the doctor gets more time.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
They're
to be
up
fair,
for the same penalty.
I'll bring it back.
Those two people that I just described,
the person
are up
performing
against
the medical
penalty.
procedure and the person who did a horrific crime are both
up for the same penalty. Yeah. So and of course the stories are coming out of Alabama about just these kind of situations, incestuous relationships that led to pregnancy, the young girls who were raped as part of a crime, not by a relative, but by just as a victim of crime, and women who said, the doctor looked at me and said, listen, neither of you are going to survive this. So what we would like to do is to save your life so that at some point in the future, you can give birth to more children. And none of those things are possible. And I almost would give an excuse if, the backwards-ass GOP candidates in Alabama didn't even put forth the amendments to say, let's just make an exception for rape and incest and age.
I think the 2 or 3 Democrats in the Alabama Senate were desperately trying to get that in.
Yeah.
And the all-white, all-male Alabama Republican Senate decided, no, we're not going to do that.
Well, they at least got them.
Poor, and this is where it's poor form. Trump came out and said he's in support of he's a pro-life supporter, but he doesn't agree with the rape and incest things that have to go in the Alabama law. And when Trump is being the voice of reason on your absurd law, then maybe your law is no good.
Also, there's literally video of Trump in the late 90s at pro-choice events, raising money for pro-choice causes. At one point, are we just going to say, bullshit, no, you're clearly not the pro-life candidate. You're not pro-life. And I will accept that being pro-choice means that you can have a variety of choice, but...
Here, at the end of it all is really religion. That's where this pro-life, pro-choice thing is really splitting. And I feel like most people who are overly religious are more likely to be pro-life, and people who are modicumly to not at all religious are not going to have the same views. And I like the note that a lot of people put out there about all these Republican senators from Alabama when their mistresses get pregnant and what are they going to do? And I would like to further that for all the Christian people out there who have decided that Trump, even though he's a sinner, is the one who is he's more likely to be the one to lead you into the promised land because he's known sin. That he also probably got an abortion at some point or funded an abortion at some point.
For sure.
I find it hard to believe that somebody like Trump, who has run around so prodigiously in his life, is not also the recipient of a receipt from an abortion clinic somewhere along the line.
Now, note this. The Alabama law is absent with the punishment for leaving the state and getting an abortion.
Yeah.
So all it really punishes is the very poor people who are stuck in Alabama and can't leave the state to get an abortion.
Yeah.
It doesn't punish the rich mistresses or the mistresses of these rich senators
who can get on a plane and go to New York and
and get the procedure done.
Have it all taken care of.
I mean, even go into liberal Mississippi and still get an abortion done at this point at 20 weeks. So, yeah, just the whole thing is ridiculous. And the most ridiculous thing that I saw being passed around by pro-life people this week was there are 23 million couples, which there's not. Yeah. 23 million couples in this country who want to adopt children. And how dare you throw a child away when there are so many people who want to take children? A couple of notes here. One, it's not 23 million. That would be of the 350 million people in this country, of which about 180 million are adults of breeding age, let's say, which makes 90 million pairs. You're telling me that a third of those people are looking to adopt children. Well, geez, I don't know why the orphanages have anyone in them. Like, clearly, this is not a problem. Second of all,
there's 3 men in this apartment at any given point in time. How many? One of those 3 would want to adopt.
I mean, I would rather.
Does that sound right to you?
I would rather adopt than have my own child. I mean, at this point, I would rather do that.
Well, that's the quickest way to get a small army going. You get the 100 children.
Yeah.
Bubba Rob.
I feel like that's been done before. Oh, noted, by the way, my other point on this is if you want to start some sort of Lebensraum program, or Lebensborn program. Lebensborn was, of course, the Nazi program where they outlawed abortion because they believed we need to build a strong society and that every child should be brought to term. And they've thus forced women to take their children to term just so that they could be raised by good German parents. And I hesitate to say this is the example that you're using because part of me thinks you're okay with this being the example that you're using. But yes, this is what we're following. This is the example we're following. Let's push women, force them to have these children, which, by the way, at the point at which we're talking are not children. They are clumps of cells, which have no identity and are not people.
Well, I think my hardest part, whenever we've talked about abortion, whether it's this week, last week, or any of the other episodes where it's come up as some sort of topic because it's been high in the news, is I don't want to do this.
No.
I really don't want to have to talk about this for the most part because I don't feel like I have anything really substantial to add to the conversation other than my personal opinion on it. And my personal opinion on it is not the same as a woman who might have to deal with this.
Yes.
And that's like, I will never have to know how to make that choice. I would only have to know how to make that choice by proxy. Like the worst I could have to do is, you know, Rachel gets pregnant and then we have to figure it out, you know, like what are we going to do about this?
There ain't no figuring it out.
No, but
We've
I'm
already
saying,
had that conversation.
No, but I'm saying like
you're going to be a daddy. That's what that's going to end up with.
I'm saying in that specific case, both Rachel and I probably would not get the highest likelihood is there would be no abortion happening.
Right.
Unless there was some sort of like, Rachel might die if this happens or the baby might die if this happens. Then I don't really consider it quite the same thing. But I mean like,
what if the side chick that you're seeing when you're out working, what if she gets pregnant?
Well, I mean, you know.
Different situation.
Yeah. And
different discussion.
That's for her to choose. No, I mean, like, I just don't, I don't have any, all I've ever wanted to be in this whole conversation is a, how should we put it? Like a friend of the issue, you know, like I just want to, if there's something that I can personally do to help, I would do it. You know, like if I could, if showing up at a rally helped something, then I would do it. But I'm not like, you know, really honestly, I don't think men should have much opinion on what happens here.
Oh, yeah. No,
other than the fact that every once in a while there is going to be a male politician who has to vote on behalf of what I would like to hope would be, in his opinion, the women of his constituency when he's making said vote. Because I mean, like, you know, it's not a representative democracy in the sense that 73% of the people who live in your district think abortion is wrong, so therefore you must think abortion is. You know, you elect somebody who you want to make the best choices because you trust them. You think that they're going to go the way that you want. But not every politician lines up with every single ideal. But I think it should be the responsibility of male politicians especially to go with what their constituents want. And most people in America, when polled, want some form of legal abortion.
Right.
And the question is not as to whether or not it begins or ends at 6 weeks, but whether or not, like, you know, it's a second trimester or third trimester, or, you know, are we following Roe v. Wade to the letter of the law, or can we come in a little bit on that? Is that a reasonable argument to have? I mean, like, these are all fine philosophical arguments to be made by people who aren't politicians. That's mostly the point I'm trying to make. Like,
well, and I think men's reasons for being part of the discussion are to raise our voices as part of a chorus, but to not be the loudest. We are not the front runner. We're not the front speaker. We're just the chorus behind, saying, yes, we agree. Also, representative democracy should operate correctly, and in no state does more than 10% of the populace believe in total bans or even bans up to 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. General consensus amongst 80% of the population is that at viability is where we draw the line. And that is 22 to 24 weeks, which is basically where we are now. And that's early. That is, if you are a child born in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins, 22 weeks is about as early as viability stands.
See, but I mean, like, and the other issue, the things I care about in terms of, like, you know, I think we sort of laid out in my opinion, where I would want my line drawn. I probably wouldn't I wouldn't want Rachel to get an abortion if it was right now, but I would want to leave open as much time as possible to change my mind in case something were to go wrong. Like,
those genetic tests that you get at 20 weeks.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, you know, if at 20 weeks we find out that, you know, this child is going to die immediately coming out of the womb, and there's, like, no chance for having a happy, healthy life, I don't see the point in continuing going on through the process.
Yeah.
Only to lose, you know, because that...
And going through childbirth, which could kill her.
Yeah, well,
could kill mother and child.
Not only that, but I mean, like, there's I don't think people think about... The pro-life argument wants to be so cut and fast on, you know, like, what defines a life. But I also think that there's a lot of things to the ancillary of that, such as, you know, there's women who give birth to children who die right away and are psychologically ruined because of that. Mm-hmm. There are women who have perfectly healthy children and are psychologically ruined because they have, you know, postpartum or any number of things that come up as complications from the pregnancy. I just think that we should open up every single available option to everyone for as long as we can all deem this reasonable, you know? And I think the question of what is reasonable will be different to different people. But I think that, you know, much like, and I don't like making parables to this, but I mean, like, I smoke, and I know that a lot of people don't like the smell of smoke. Mm-hmm. So I make the choice to be kind to others, that I'm going to walk, you know, 20 feet away from other people if I'm smoking. If there's a restaurant of people sitting outside, I'm going to walk all the way to the corner to smoke my cigarette, because I don't want to disturb the people outside eating their lunch. Legally speaking, I could stand right outside of them and smoke my cigarette and blow it in their direction.
Yeah.
There's nothing against the law about doing that, but you know, it's just a reasonable thing, you know? So, like, I wouldn't be on the side of unlimited abortions right up until the moment that the child is born,
which is not what any law.
No. But I'm saying, like, I'm just saying,
don't believe Fox News.
I wouldn't be in favor of that sort of thing, but I think there should be some sort of cutoff point, and that needs to be discussed, I think, mostly by, you know, people in the medical field and women more specifically.
Yeah. The most ironic thing of all is Alabama governor making her announcement of supporting this law and that she was going to sign it. Opened her press conference by talking about how all life is precious. And do you know what the second half of that press conference was about?
No.
How Alabama was going to execute their 23rd inmate this year. So all life is precious, except for all of those guys on death row. Yeah. And the guy on death row they're going to execute arguably has a mental acuity of 70-some. Very low.
Yeah.
Probably just high enough by the Supreme Court to execute him, but they're not going to test him again because God knows they don't want that other result, so that he's so low that they can't execute him. So announcing that all life is precious and then we're going to ban abortions and executing a guy all in the same press conference.
Like, well, and also this whole week with Republican think tanks and, you know, media and politicians going on and on about how precious life is and how we should be taking care of these children, even if they're not born yet, and blah, blah, blah. Yet we found out that the number of children who are essentially living in cages in various different ways down at the border is way higher than we originally thought, which is already way higher than we had originally thought before. Because if you remember when we first started talking about this issue, it was like, maybe it's 5,000, and then it jumped to like 10, and now it turns out that there might be like 30,000 families and children
living in cages,
in internment camps, essentially. I don't get how if it was across the line, like we need to take care of everyone, like, and this is this children at the border will not stand and abortion will not stand, then I get where you're coming from. Yeah. I can see a clear through line in your thought process that allows me to understand, at least psychologically, where you're coming from. But if you're going to say that the life of the child is important, but the life of the child who's already alive, but sleeping on a sleeping bag on concrete in the middle of San Antonio somewhere, that doesn't add up to me. Right. That's my...
Also, as soon as that child is born, you fight to give it health care for the rest of its life. You fight to give it food, proper housing, clothing, the basic necessities of life. You don't want to give that child because it was born in poverty, but you want to force the child to be born in poverty. And I'm not really understanding the disconnect between those two things. Like, at what point are we going to say you're full of shit? Like, if you really care about every life and every life is precious, why are we not saying, listen, adults can go fuck themselves, but we need to expand Medicaid so that it covers every child under the age of 18, that they get good medical care, good dental care, and all the parent has to do is show up at a doctor or hospital, and you're covered. Yeah. If you take any sort of Medicare at all, you have to cover any child who shows up. Great. And we're going to, the food stamp program is really screwed up. But let's talk about Wick, where all you get is milk and formula, and maybe add diapers to that, because diapers aren't covered by any program, and all kids use diapers, and it's very expensive. I can tell you from personal experience, diapers are ridiculously expensive. Any of that. Yeah. If we really care about kids and you really, really want to fight for life, let me see the other part of that first. And by the way, let's do what everyone is talking about this week and say every dollar you're going to invest in fighting against abortion, let's match that with a dollar doing making condoms available, making birth control available, giving education to kids, because Alabama also is the hardest place in the country to get birth control if you are a teenager, if a teenage girl especially. And if you're a male, condoms are relatively widely available, but they actually tax contraceptives in Alabama. And the education has to be 50% or more based on abstinence-only education. And generally speaking, the education in Alabama is abstinence-only, which we know does not work. Abstinence-only education is not a real thing. That's not education. It's you pretending that kids don't have sex. Yeah. And that's just not the case. Kids have sex. Sorry about that.
Well, and again, I used to have... we used to have fire drills in school, and it wasn't for the purpose of let's just pretend that there's a fire. It was, here's what you do in case there's a fire. Yeah. Like, this is not meant to be like a real situation, but act like you would, act calm, and just see how quickly you can get out of this building. Wait, if everyone just plays along and
the fire drills don't make kids set fires? No. I thought that's what it was. It was you practice for the fire drill because kids set fires.
The problem with abstinence-only education is it works great up until the moment that you have a half-naked girl in front of you. And then you start making up a lot of choices based off of things that aren't in your mind. Like, you're starting to say, like, oh, shit. I am not prepared for this moment. I wish we had a fire drill on this. Yes. And that's what a sex education that isn't abstinence only kind of provides. It's just, at the very least, if you find yourself in the situation where you might have sex with a girl, or you might have sex with a boy or whatever, this is what you should know. Yeah. And
I'd be like having an active shooter drill and not using a white male teen as your prospective shooter, because if you were doing an active shooter drill and I don't know, perhaps you use a man in a head wrap as if he was Arab, that would have taken place in exactly 0 of the school shootings that we have had since 1998. Yet there is a school that chose to do that because it's not about being prepared. It's about scaring the shit out of you. And absence-only education, which at some point just says, if you touch another person, you will get AIDS, which I feel like is what the Christian school I went to in middle school. I think that was our sex education.
Like, that was what they said to you too?
Sex, don't do it. You're going to get AIDS. By the way, I grew up with a lot of fear of AIDS. I feel like kids today don't fear AIDS as much as they. I mean, maybe because Magic Johnson's still alive, they're just like, fuck it. Like, you know.
I think that it seemed like it slowed down a lot once condoms became more of a talking point.
I guess maybe.
Like, I think over the course of the 80s, as condoms became more of like, well, you got to use a condom.
Yeah.
It became like the numbers stopped growing, and then it became less of a fear on top of people's minds.
And there was no option for me. I
mean, like, I remember when I was first having sex, I was still worried about potentially getting AIDS or anything.
That's against my point. That was like 2 years ago. I'm talking about back in the 90s.
I still worried. I worried that 50% of women had some sort of sexually transmitted disease that I might get.
Well,
and like
do.
I had to worry about it every single time until I got a girl who got tested. You know, like
they're all dirty. Don't touch any of them, Corey. But yeah, I mean, my generation, I condoms every time. That was just what it was. It was cost of doing business was, all right, guys, let's go figure out if we can get the old guy down at the liquor store to buy us a 5th. And then we're going to stop by the pharmacy and buy ourselves a 3-pack.
Just like if you were going to smoke some weed, you have to buy a pipe. You have to buy some rolling papers. You got to do something along with just the weed.
Don't try to MacGyver an apple. That's not going to happen.
If you wanted to have sex, the bare minimum is you invest in a condom.
Yeah.
And like a good one, not like some weird condom.
And then if you're Corey, you carry that bad boy around for 7 years.
Not Ralph's quality condoms.
So from people who are getting fucked, some people who are not getting fucked, I feel really jealous about the Morehouse class of 2019.
I bet you do.
Hoo boy. So I've been well publicized on the podcast talking about my $300,000 plus student loan debt. Mm-hmm. That's right. 6 figures, multi-6-figure student loan debt.
Many 6 figures.
Yes. And the commencement speaker, whose name I probably should have looked up, but the commencement speaker at Morehouse College this year finished his commencement speech by announcing that he was going to pay off the student loans of every person in the class of 2019 because he was given an honorary degree and he felt as though he was part of the class. So as a gift to his classmates, he was going to pay off their student loans. I don't know who else graduated in the Hofstra class of 2006, but if you feel like paying off, your classmates' student loans.
Or, just the famous, who's Phil Rosenthal went to Hofstra.
Yeah, there you go.
He seems to...
Richard Jenny went to Hofstra too, I think.
He made some money on the Everybody Loves Raymond. Maybe he wants to talk about how everyone loves tax-free Hofstra education.
I mean, first of all...
tuition-free Hofstra education.
He didn't make enough in that entire time on Everybody Loves Raymond to pay off my student loan debt, let alone the whole classes. But nonetheless, it brings up 2 interesting questions. One, you lucky devils with getting your student loans paid off, because that really gives you a leg up. Just being able to say, I can kind of take whatever job I want. I know people who had no student loans and were able to just be like, hey, I'm going to go dick around for a couple years. I don't need to get a job immediately. For me, August, my first student loan payment was due. I was like, all right, got to find a job, got to get to it. And I was trying to run a campaign at the same time, which really sucked. The other side of this story is the total payment for those student loans, $40 million for the graduating class. And you'd think it would be a bigger part of the story, and I don't think it is, except for maybe on leftist Twitter, where I'm a frequent contributor. But $40 million in student loans for the class of 2019. Like, good grief.
Only 40 students. It's a really small school.
No, I was going to say, it was more than that, right? Like, it was 300.
I was just kidding.
I think it was only like 319 students, though. So, like, that's still an amazingly high amount. And Morehouse is not Yale or Harvard. Like, it's not super expensive tuition. So, how is it that few students ran up $40 million in student loan debt? Well, because college is goddamn expensive.
Yeah.
And ridiculous.
I feel like I've been thinking about this myself. If I had a kid who was like, 17, 18 years old at this point.
Which, by the way, we are just about at that age where you could have hypothetically,
yeah.
You have a 16-year-old.
No, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Could have.
Speaking of condoms back when we were 16.
Yeah.
Thank God.
God, am I glad that I didn't have to I didn't get anyone pregnant up until this point. Knocking on wood that it doesn't happen anytime soon, too.
Working on the line at Andy Nelson's in your 15th year.
Ooh.
I you.
No, I just... I don't imagine I would necessarily tell my kid that they should go to college.
Yeah.
If I was a parent of a college-age kid right now. I wouldn't stop them from going to college. I wouldn't say like, I'm not going to help you or anything like that, but I would also probably try and figure out what they want first. Because I mean, like, if I would have honestly spent time thinking about what I wanted when I was 18, then I might have gone to film school instead of college. And film school is way more affordable than college. And, that might have changed a lot, Like,
by the way, I'd feel a lot better about that $300,000 if it were something I was interested in and something that
like
I was
if you were a
doing.
doctor or something like that.
If I wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
If they had made me go out and practice law in the summer of my first year of law school, and I would say, this is miserable. Who would want to do this for their whole life?
Yeah.
Let's just call it right here. It would have been better. Or if I had, again, given a thought to like, what would you want to do for the rest of your life? That's really the question. What do you want to do for the rest of your life? And I didn't give a thought to that. It was just, I'm going to college. I got to figure out what I'm going to do when I get there.
You know what maybe they should do? You remember like the Scared Straight program?
Yes.
Where like you'd bring some troubled kids into a prison and have them talk to a prisoner about like how they're doing a 15-year bid for armed robbery or something like that.
Never had to do that.
Maybe they should do like a Scared Straight for like jobs.
The worst professions?
Where no. You just find somebody who's really crotchety about the job that they have, like a crotchety lawyer.
Come talk to me.
And then just have like 5 kids who think they want to be lawyers, like sit down in front of you and just be like, you know what's really terrible? Family law. You ever see a kid screaming and crying because their parents are being split apart from one another and they don't get to see their dad anymore?
Yeah.
Like that's what you have to look forward to. And you're never going to be able to pay out those student loans. It's a lot. You're never going to get out from under them. And then maybe you get some kids that go like, maybe I'm going to be a pathologist instead.
So I got yelled at by one of my employees because her little brother came by the office and he was like, yeah, so I'm going to graduate next year and or graduate in the spring.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go on to law school. I'm applying to law schools now. And I just sat him down and had like a nice little 20-minute talk with him. So he's taking a year off instead, just to feel it out and just to see what he wants to do. And when he made that announcement, she came in and was just like, what did you do? I'm like, I was just honest with the kid, and I just told him, like, think about what you're going to spend and whether it's worth it.
I told him the truth.
Sometimes you got to hear it. Also,
it's just like, I imagine if you said to yourself, like, when you were a kid, like, I want to be a professional baseball player. It's just like, all right, well, it seems great. You play baseball every single night of the year, for 162 games, 3 hours a night. You make millions upon millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Sounds wonderful. But you also have to stay in immaculate shape. Mm-hmm. You have to be careful about what you eat, not just while you're a professional athlete, but all the way up through your entire life to get to the point where you're even considered a professional athlete.
Yep.
Then most of the time you spend in hotels and on planes traveling from city to city.
That part I don't mind.
Well, I mean, like, but you're sort of like, you're like in and out of these places,
Yep.
Yes, you get the money and you get the fame and you get the girls and stuff like that, but there's a lot of counterpoints to it that nobody ever brings up. You get some kid on Twitter calling you an asshole for, striking out in the third or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things that dentist doesn't have to worry about some kid like blowing up his Twitter with like, hey, way to ruin Timmy's wisdom tooth surgery.
But the profession with the highest rate of suicide, dentistry.
Yeah.
Second only to lawyers. Or lawyers are second to dentists.
Yeah.
But part of my other argument is college loans are predatory lending. and I've seen this going around, and I agree wholeheartedly. What bank would give a 18-year-old kid a $150,000 loan?
Yeah.
If I just, with no credit at all, said, hey, I got this crazy idea. I'm going to go spend $150,000 of your money to get drunk really often. And at some point, maybe a couple times a week, I'll show up at this place. And at the end of it, I'll get a piece of paper that might make me earn more money over my lifetime. What bank would ever give me that loan?
How about this? I just had an idea. I don't know if this is a thing or if this is just a weird idea that just popped in my head. What if, legally speaking, the rate of interest on any student loan debt is tied to your performance in school up until the moment that you take out the debt?
I mean, well, no, because the thing that
so
they
if
don't
you're like
tell you
if
about,
you're like an A+ student, like you've only gotten A's your entire career up until the point, like up through senior year, and then you get loans, then you get them at a 0.1% interest for life or something, like.
I mean, I guess that encouraged, but again,
and then if you're like really dumb and you got D's everywhere and you just barely pass through every single year, then you're the one with the explosive like 23% interest rate or something like that.
Here's where it gets like,
and then maybe you think about it a little bit more. If you're just like, well, to go to college, to go to Arizona State and do communications, I'd have to also factor in this 23% interest rate. So maybe I should just go be a plumber instead. Like maybe that'll keep some people from like,
yes,
it'll siphon off the people who wouldn't want to pay the huge. I mean, I imagine there's a lot of them who would still go, but just because it's like 23%, what the fuck do I care?
Right,
and that's gonna be my problem.
When you're 18 years old, you don't
like when you get the car loan. And
I had a credit card that was 23%, and I'm like, it's fine, like 23%. That's like nothing, right? I don't really like.
I
who
mean,
cares?
if I need to buy something for $100 and I don't have the money, but it's like 23% tax for just having to buy it early. Yeah.
So I don't. That will probably dissuade some people. But then the problem though is, how do you do the refinancing? Because by the way, each one of those loans is an individual account.
Yeah.
So when I got out of undergrad, I had 8 accounts, each of them for one semester's worth of money.
Oh.
So, I mean, I kept my grades up. I graduated magna cum laude from undergrad. So let's say I kept my grades up. And I kept that low interest rate. But then the first thing that they offer to do when you get out is, let's take those 8 loans and combine them into one big loan. And then that way, when you pay down faster, which is true. Except for the 4% loan that I had in college turned into an 8% loan when I got them all together. And then I added in a 9% loan for each semester of law school, which when I put all of those loans together at the end turned into a 13% loan overall, not because the interest rate went up, but because the amount when you put them together is so large that it qualified as a jumbo loan. I could have bought a fucking house for the amount of money I had on student loans, and it was really dumb. But it's also, there's a level of like pot committed.
Yeah.
Like,
well, there was
I'm 3 years in.
also a level of like, I'm at law school, but I'm also an adult who has a life. So I need a little bit more for my loan so that I can eat this week.
Right. And by the way, the law school doesn't provide like a
meal plan.
A meal plan.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like I have to go to the store and buy food. I cannot just live on campus and eat.
Right.
I lived on campus at Hofstra, and the graduate meal plan gave me access to the exact same dining facilities, but was twice as much as the undergrad meal plan. Why? Because they just know that you can get more money, and they're just getting more money from you. And Hofstra's job is to make money.
You see, here, I think at the end of the day, we need to have a serious conversation about what businesses can be for profit and which ones cannot.
Yeah.
And I think that colleges and loans for colleges need to be a not for profit completely.
Like healthcare.
Yeah, like healthcare should be as well. Like
alternate plan.
Yeah.
Guillotines. We just guillotine everybody who is in control of the student loan industry, and then we just pretend that all of that debt doesn't exist.
Maybe okay, so maybe on your guillotine point, maybe you could do like a shots fired kind of thing.
Okay.
So like take one thing that everyone hates. Like let's just say student loans, right?
Everybody hates student loans.
You get the CEOs of all the student loan companies just lined up.
Yep.
You live stream it, guillotine them all in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And then like have one person like, in the mask, but like look at the camera and just be like, healthcare? your next week unless you figure it out.
Start to get a lot of problems.
And all of a sudden you see
here.
the Kaiser CEO go like, you know what? I think our prices are a little bit high. And
I'm not saying Medicare for all is a perfect solution. What I'm saying is maybe we should shoot for 100% coverage, one way or the other.
I would like every single person in America to come up, pick up their $1,000 check from Kaiser Permanente.
You bring your Social Security card to any Kaiser facility, we will see you. We'll treat you. We'll help you fill out the paperwork. By the way, new episode.
You have
of
a pre-existing condition? No problem.
We don't even ask.
Come on in.
We don't even ask. We're not going to fill out the paperwork. It's the new episode of New Amsterdam.
Yeah.
The head of the medical director, he gets this idea like, all these people in here, everyone qualifies for health insurance. They're all poor. They just don't know that they qualify. So what we need to do is sign everyone up for health insurance. And then like the catch in that plan is that the health insurance bracket is so complicated that not even the hospital administrators can figure out the best plan for everybody.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, that didn't work. All right. So what's the next? Like, that's where we are. But you know what? I think it gets real uncomplicated when you start guillotining people on national TV and being like, hey, payday lenders, you're up on Thursday.
Yeah.
See you then. And then all of a sudden it's like, that's 23%. It's a little much. We're just going to go ahead and forgive everything that was out there now. Just come in, pay off what you owe. No interest.
You
no
know,
interest
when you came in to cash or to get an advance on your check, we happened to notice that you get paid $1,500 a week. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
0% interest on this one.
We
know you're good for it.
Yeah. You're clearly going to come in, right? Yeah. So pay off what you owe us right now. We're actually going to front you a little bit just as a thank you.
It's amazing how this system works so well. I didn't, whenever you said guillotines before, it just made me think like just discriminate murder. But I mean, now that it seems like it's part of a plan.
Focused murder? Yeah. Why does listen, all the faults of communism aside, the general threat of murder at all times tends to keep the rich people in line.
It's amazing how that works.
Cut off some prince and king's heads and all of a sudden people start acting right. That's all I'm saying.
Speaking of murder, keeping things in line. Shall we take a trip on down to the Baltimore corner?
Where you get the straight dough?
Indeed.
Oh, man. It's not quite the murder capital of the world, but 33 murders in 30 days, you think it might be. Listen, we're vying for that championship, and we will not be denied one of these years.
You're going down, Chicago.
Listen, we're going to win per capita one way or another. Either drive out so many people that the population just goes down, or murder enough that we get up there in the top spot.
It's not even summer yet either. By the way, it's been weird weather-wise, I think, everywhere.
Listen, global warming is not a thing, Corey. I know you're trying to press your liberal logic on us. Global warming is not a thing.
I like how every single week my political affiliation changes based off of what you're trying to insult me with.
Well, listen, the spectrum is really a circle. If you go far enough left, eventually you go right again. Again, guillotines.
What's your political philosophy, Corey? Well, he's either a communist or he's a Nazi.
Wait, are you a commentator on Fox News? I feel like I've heard that argument before. But yes, Baltimore, 33 murders in 30 days. It is not Memorial Day yet. I think they're planning another peace. What's it called?
The Baltimore ceasefire. They did one, and there was like because somebody died during the Baltimore ceasefire. Everyone likes to jump up and down and go like, "It doesn't work." And I'm just like, yeah, no. I mean, they're not out there being Batman. I mean,
also, it's not like they're
they can do.
They're not the Baltimore Police Department. Yeah. It's not like they're out on corners actually patrolling. And also, they're not like the Baltimore Police Department. They're not shooting innocent people in garages. If you've been paying attention to Undisclosed, which you should, the trial of Keith Davis Jr. begins in July, but not on that topic this week. Going to a few other things. First, I just want to touch on the fact that a few months back, we joked heavily about the Fort Worth chief of police coming to Baltimore and being the brand new Baltimore chief of police.
Yeah.
And then he withdrew his name because he was announced as a new person without any interview process, basically.
Yeah, and people didn't seem to like that very much.
Yeah, people don't like being railroaded. Jack Young in particular. And funny story, Jack Young, now the mayor of the city. So weird how that worked out. But it turns out that all the good work he did in Fort Worth maybe didn't matter because now he's out in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Basically, the mayor and council said, we need to go a new direction. We felt as though he wasn't focusing on the policing here in Fort Worth. Maybe he's out interviewing some places. Wasn't focusing on what he should do at home.
I do feel a little bit bad for him in the sense that I think that he thought he probably had this job in Baltimore. And he was just like, I think everyone's sort of understanding that I'm going to move on from Fort Worth. I'm going to go to Baltimore. They're going to find somebody new and we'll all be good.
Yes.
And then when Fort Worth heard that Joel Fitzgerald might be leaving, they're just like, all right, well, I guess we got to start finding a replacement. And then when Joel Fitzgerald was not leaving, then they're just like, well, we found this guy we like so much better.
I mean, we did. We found some really good candidates out there.
You shouldn't have brought up the fact that you were thinking about leaving because it made us think about who we were replacing you with.
And now we did.
And now, you're gone. Sorry. Just in regards to Baltimore police commissioners, Michael Harrison. Anytime you want to start doing something, I would. I feel like I haven't even heard him like at a press conference, just like sort of.
Oh, I mean, well, he defended.
Talk generally about his ideas of what's going on, or like.
Police have shot 3 people, I think, since he's become commissioner. He defended all 3 as qualified use of forces without reviewing any videotape or anything, just blanketly defending the police, which seems a little off book for him. Not the guy I thought we were getting. I mean, in New Orleans, he was was it New Orleans? Baton Rouge?
Yeah, New Orleans.
He was very much like listen, we're going to review, we're going to see, if any charges are necessary, we'll of course support the investigation. But it's like Baltimore is just like a corrupting force. Like you cannot come here. The FOP just has something on everybody. And they're just like, you're going to back our guy, see? It's not even an option, see? And I was like, he's like, okay.
He just woke up every single morning, his tires were slashed, and he's just like, this seems ominous.
feel like this might be a message somebody's trying to send me. But haven't really seen him otherwise. He
just like Gene Ryan. What is it, Gene Kelly or Gene Ryan? I can't remember.
He's got FOP. 2 first names, right?
Yeah. Always a crowd pleaser. 2 first names.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever. Gene, whatever.
FOP president.
Every single morning, you just see a knife in your tires with "Love Gene" written on it.
Not really sure how this is going to work out. But
I can't say for sure that that's the FOP president. There's many people named Gene.
Next time, not a knife. It's a pin from the FOP, just so it's clear who you're dealing with. But he hasn't really.
This is Gene, who's not Gene Ryan. Sir means business.
He came in with all these big ideas about how he was going to defend the what's it called? The consent agreement and make some changes. And I've seen nothing. So, again, tweet of the week, Baltimore, things that we have, things that we need, a mayor, an active police chief, and working computers, things that we got. Mayor. Okay. None of the other things are actually working.
But anytime he feels like he wants to step up and do something, I'm willing to change my mind on Michael Harrison. Just waiting here with bated breath for something to happen.
To be fair, he hasn't done anything bad.
Yeah,
he just hasn't done anything good either.
And I mean, like maybe those 3 police shootings are, on the up and up per se.
Maybe. I'm gonna go with no, but sure, maybe. Benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
But. The big news
maybe he just got blessed with 3 good shoots in his first 3 out the gate.
I mean,
it's like nothing I had to worry about here. These are all quality shootings.
There's a chance, I suppose. But the big news out of Baltimore this week has nothing to do with police shootings directly, and it's not about violence directly. Big story is about horses.
Yeah.
Because the second prong of the Triple Crown was held in Northwest Baltimore just this weekend.
Yep. So we've talked about the Preakness here and there throughout the years.
Pegasus, a favorite of ours. Bring back Pegasus.
There was also the talks of when people were bringing in shopping carts full of beer and then having porta potty races and the debauchery of the infield way back when in the day. Now it seems like a more demure occasion.
Well, the grandstands are condemned, so they have to send down the rich people down to the infield. So
catching up for people who may not be aware, the state of Maryland subsidizes the company that owns Pimlico Racetrack to help with repairs and upkeep and blah 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 blah. But
Corey, do they only own Pimlico?
They don't. They also own Laurel Park.
Oh, okay.
The newer horse racing facility down in Montgomery County.
Yes.
And over the last 5 years or so, this company has been spending about 90% of that money on Laurel Park and almost none of it on Pimlico. And that sort of came to roost this week as there's been rampant speculation that they're trying to move the Preakness to Laurel Park because none of the toilets seem to be working at Pimlico. They had to condemn an entire section of the grandstands because it was not safe enough for people to watch the horse race in.
Yeah.
And I think I'm at the point right now. There is a law, by the way, in the books that says the Preakness has to be held inside of Baltimore unless there is some sort of emergency reason why it cannot be held.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, under hypothetical, if it was, May 10th and the Preakness is about to happen in like a week or something like that.
Yeah.
And say Pimlico burns to the ground.
Sure.
Then they could move it under those circumstances to Laurel while they rebuild Pimlico or something like that.
Which might be the position to take at this point. It might be better off.
I think that the Preakness needs to stay in Baltimore. I think it's important for not only Maryland but Baltimore that it stays there. It's one of the only like bright spots the city gets every single year.
Yeah, it's the only reason white people care about Northwest Baltimore.
But I'm going to say this, and this comes from a lifetime of never being able to afford a horse or ride a horse or care about horse racing or any of this. But knowing that all the people who seem to care about horse racing and all these sort of things also seem to be exceptionally rich.
Strange.
My new point here is I think that the rich people who participate in the horse racing need to pay for the stadiums in which they take place.
Okay.
If you were to say to me, the Ravens need a new stadium, we're only going to charge sports fans taxes in order to pay for that stadium. Okay. I would agree with that principle.
And how would you do that?
And I think that only rich people should have to pay for the horse racing.
How do you do that?
How would you do that?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the easiest way to do it would be to put some sort of tax on the ticket, which would be a way to do it.
You think only rich people are going to Pimlico?
No, but I think that the rich people are the people who profit off of horse racing continuing.
Okay.
And I think that, like a college student who gets drunk in the infield is not quite the same as, Bob Baffert.
Like, gets drunk in the grandstand. Yeah.
I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's a sport that only matters to the people who invested a lot of money into a horse so that they could hopefully win some races and then breed the horse and make more money off of it.
Right.
Or people who gamble on the horses and make money off of gambling on the horses.
But see, that's where it's like slots. Yes, rich people get rich from the slots, but it is a diversion for less rich people.
Yeah, I still think that if you are somebody who owns a horse, then you should probably be paying for Pimlico.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
So maybe make a registration fee?
Yeah.
Like if you want to come in and race your horse, you have a fee.
If you want to have a horse in the state of Maryland, then you have to pay the percentage of tax that every other Marylander is not paying.
Okay.
To upkeep Pimlico.
As someone who will never own a horse, I am fine with that.
You are fine with that tax? Yeah.
I am fine with that tax. I do agree,
it's
though.
just the same, public money going to like building a marina that only yachts for rich people will have. Like you have a $15 million yacht, you can pay for the fucking marina. Like, there's no reason that my money needs to go towards your fucking marina.
Yep.
Smarter minds than me will be able to come up with the exact way that you only get horse people.
A luxury tax.
Only get rich people.
Luxury tax. If you trying to ball on a budget, you are also going to be paying part of that for Pimlico.
Maybe an excise tax on luxury items.
Yeah.
Like if you want to buy, we're not going to stop you from buying the Bentley convertible.
Sure.
Like, if you want it, you can have it, but realize that there's a 10% excise.
And if you go buy it in Delaware and bring it over here, we gonna tax you when you go to register it.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I'm fine with that. I do think that Preakness should stay in Baltimore. It is one of the historic things that Baltimore has, and we have so little. And I mean, where again, you're going to take it down to Montgomery County and give them more. Is that really? It feels a little bit. You said earlier. I mean, it feels a little bit like the Colts sneaking out. Like that's kind of what they're doing right now.
Well, and the other side of it too is that Pimlico is really. I don't know how much you ever spent time up near Pimlico.
Only driving Uber.
Yeah, but
I'm picking up the rich assholes.
There's a lot of like sort of like the neighborhood congregates around Preakness, and it feels like people are just sort of like walking in from all directions and sort of converging on Pimlico. If I remember correctly, Laurel though is sort of like
it's out, right?
Yeah, it's like the Redskins Stadium.
Yeah,
where it's just like the only way to get there is to pay $20 for parking to the Redskins to go see the game,
or take a train and then take an Uber from the train station.
Yeah, and there's no like way to like take public transportation or walk to it or anything like that. And it seems to be built to be sort of like the new rich person. It's like when all the casinos went up, like Laurel Park seems like the Maryland Live version of a gaming establishment, like,
yeah,
I don't know. I maybe that's the one too. Like, a tax on, gaming winnings or something like that.
Yeah. But then again, you're striking at poor people who are still going out and gambling and
winnings over a certain amount.
So the poor guy who hits the lotto has to
no. But I'm saying like if you're at a horse racing facility and you win more than $5,000 on a horse race, then a percentage of that tax is going to go towards fixing Pimlico.
No matter what your original bet was. So let's say you bet
a 5,000 to 1 odd and put $1 down and won $5,000.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll give you that's just luck. But I mean, if you win $5,000 because you put down 4,500 on a 2 to 1 or or a 12 to 1 shot, and you win 500. I don't know how those odds work. Smaller, right? Smaller is worse.
Yeah.
So 3 to 1, and you put down 4,500 and you clear 5,300. Okay, great. Well, you actually won more than 5,000, so we're going to tax you. Right?
Again, brighter minds than me can figure out the details. I'm just sort of throwing random ideas out here.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Brighter minds are trying to figure out what the solution is. But in the end, Preakness was running Baltimore. They're on to Belmont. The highlight of the race for me was one of our horse brethren throwing off the shackles of servitude and deciding to run his own race for himself. And yes, comrade horse, I'm with you.
Viva la Equus, viva la Quebec.
Exactly. Yes. But also, I've said for a long time, it seemed weird to me that what do the jockeys do? And everyone's like, you gotta understand, it's a sport. The jockeys are driving the horses.
Yeah.
They're the ones. And then the guy, he bucks off his jockey at the very beginning and finishes in the middle of the pack. And I'm just like, if he didn't have that dude on his back to begin with, is there a chance he wins the race without I mean, he's disqualified at the beginning, but is there a chance he wins the race? Like, maybe the jockeys, maybe it should be like dog racing, and we just put the horses out there and we just let them run. But what would they chase?
Is that a carrot? Like,
yeah, what would they chase? Like a carrot, maybe? I don't know. I feel like that's the problem, is getting them to run. Just give them a little slap on the ass at the gate.
The exposed ass of the trainer who beats them every day.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Steeplechase. Start with the jockey or the trainers first. Trainers go. And then 1 minute later, horses go. And it's who's quickest to the quarter mile. That's what we're going to do. I would watch that. I would get into horse racing if that was it.
I think so much of my problem with horse racing too is the amount of horses that die.
Oh yeah,
like racing.
Santa Anita, 24 since December, or something like that. Ridiculous.
Santa Ana. Yeah, like I don't know. Like I prefer that animals not die in your sport. Yes. I mean, I feel like if 24 football players have died since December, then we'd start having a different conversation about football.
Well, CET.
I mean, I don't know. It's such a yeah. I mean, it's a weird place that we live in right now, but we'll see.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's close it up. The Baltimore corner.
We get the straight dope.
Yes. So here's your warning. we're about to talk some spoilers.
Are we going to knock out these two real quick, or are we just going to...
No, we'll skip that. Yeah, we're already at about an hour, so...
well, then I'll just say this one thing about Robert Pattinson maybe being Batman.
Okay.
Everyone thought Heath Ledger as the Joker was a horrible idea at the time. Yep. So maybe wait a little bit before you make your judgments.
Everybody thought Christian Bale as Batman was a horrible idea. Yeah. Give it a little time.
Everyone thought Michael Keaton as Batman was a horrible idea.
Everybody thought Ben Affleck... Okay, no, that's a bad example.
Wait till the actual goddamn movie comes out before you make choices. I would have told you, if you would have asked me to go gut reaction on Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker... I would have said that sounds like a crazy, stupid, idiot idea.
Yep.
And I watched the trailer, and every single time I see it, I get so fucking excited I can't even handle myself.
It's October. We have to wait till October.
Can't wait to see this fucking movie.
DC, I don't know what you're doing, but stop trying to build a universe. Just give us the one-offs or the trilogies of a guy by him, like a Batman trilogy. I'll take.
Todd Phillips doesn't want to direct 20 of these movies. No. He just wants to do one and go on.
And give Patty Jenkins 3 Wonder Womans. No Justice League, just Wonder Woman. Yeah. That's all I really want. And let's give Tom Hardy. Oh no, Venom is Marvel. What was Tom Hardy? Oh, he's Bane. He was Bane in the other movie. You know what? Give me a Bane trilogy. I don't give a fuck. I'll watch 3 movies with Bane in it, just because Tom Hardy's a dreamboat. Anyway, so relax, guy. I mean, again, literally every person who puts on the cowl, they're like, I don't know about this. Val Kilmer. Oh, that's another.
See, the problem though is anytime people are really excited about who's Batman, it turns out horribly. Yeah. People were really excited about George Clooney as Batman because they're like, who could be more Bruce Wayne than George Clooney? Yeah. And then you watch it and you're just like,
nipples.
That movie sucks.
Nipples on the suit? Yeah. How dare you? Oh, but that's the first one.
You ruined the comics for me.
That's the first one I remember because McDonald's did a big push for the Clooney Batman movie. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. The fucking car was ugly too. Anyway, not important. From this point on, if you have not seen Game of Thrones or The Avengers, you're going to want to stop right here because we are going to have some spoilers. It's been 4 weeks since Avengers opened. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't seen it by now, I mean, you're probably not going to see it. So,
and honestly, with Game of Thrones, it's a different sort of thing. I feel like if you haven't watched it by now, then it's already been ruined to you by a bunch of other people.
And
so
19.5 million people watched it night of. And they're predicting another 10 million will watch it today as we record before tomorrow when this is live. 30 million people are going to watch this. If you're not one of them, I'm sorry. Skip forward. You're going to miss the next 10 minutes. So, okay. So spoiler warning.
I would say you could probably just end the podcast here. Yeah. Because this is all we're going to talk about.
Good night, everybody. Okay, so this is it for the whole show. So we'll say goodbye later. If you want, you can skip forward to the buys or just whatever. Anyway, so spoiler alert. And after this point, it's unsafe. So where do you want to start? Game of Thrones or Avengers?
Avengers.
Okay. Yes.
I don't know what I'm going to do in a world without Iron Man.
We're going to have Iron Man.
Well, I mean, we're going to have another person be Iron Man at some point. But I mean, God, how good is Jon Favreau at calling these things? Because he stuck up hard for RDJ to get into Iron Man. Yep. And that little move started this incredibly life-changing moment for Robert Downey Jr. And not just financially, but just in terms of he was unhireable. Out. He was you would be more likely to see Harvey Weinstein as a producer on your movie than Robert Downey Jr. be able to actually star in something because he was the insurance premium was ridiculous. They couldn't afford it.
Yeah. But in the end, the other side of that is what he did for the fandom. This is Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark is the first time that the movie universe, if you're joining us right now, spoiler alerts for Avengers and Game of Thrones. We're talking about Game of Thrones and talking about Avengers. I see people jumping in. I think so. Give them a little warning.
Yeah.
But the comics started looking more like RDJ and they started acting more like his character in the movie. You know what I mean? He skewed the comics because they were like, you know what? We thought we had a handle on Tony Stark. It seems like this guy's got a better handle on Tony Stark than we did. So let's just drive the character that direction. And from the jump, from the very first 2008 Iron Man movie, I could not imagine anyone else as Tony Stark from that point. Yeah. And luckily, we're not going to have someone else as Tony Stark. It looks like the movie universe is moving on to basically another man takes up the mantle. But more than, we just talked about all of the Batman and the villain stuff in the DC universe. Again, how many people said what are you thinking, Jon Favreau? This is the worst decision you could possibly make. This guy is not what you're going to build a franchise around. And now here we are, like, on the verge of weeping in the theater as we have to say goodbye to this guy. So
I mean, overall, I thought Avengers Endgame was really good. I made this point in the review, and I think it's something that people need to consider a little bit, which is that the perfect ending for you, what you imagined the perfect ending might not be the same perfect ending as somebody else had in mind. But sometimes you have to just be understanding of, if somebody like if it worked for somebody else, it's got to work for you. And like I made the point of like a wedding, a friend's wedding. You might have in your mind what your perfect wedding would be. It's going to be in a church. The reception's going to be here. We're going to have crab cakes. We're going to have a band and blah, 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 blah.
But I'm allergic to crab.
Yeah. But you show up to your friend's wedding and, they're having it in a backyard at a garden and, they have steak for the reception and there's a DJ and these things aren't exactly like what you wanted, but it's your friend's wedding and that's what they want.
Yep.
And you still have fun at the wedding, even if it's not the things that you picked.
Right.
And
you had expectations going in. Did they hit all of the points that they needed to hit for this to? Was there a preacher? Did they exchange vows? Did they walk down the aisle at some point? Was there a dance and a cake? Yeah, we hit all the major points. We covered the ground. Yeah. It doesn't matter that they did it a different way than you wanted it to be.
Right. Because there's no way in the world that you were going to please everyone. So you had to just do it the way that you felt was right. And I think that maybe it would have been to the benefit of everyone involved if they would have taken just a little bit more time to work on it. Because I think that there was some holes in the logic that felt a little like we got to get this thing out to market pretty quickly. It's like we're writing both of the Avengers films at the same time.
Yeah.
And we're shooting them at the same time. So therefore we have to know what's going on, before the first movie even comes out, we have to have the second one written. So if there's some sort of weird reaction to something in the first, you're kind of fucked.
That's all we got. So, well, I mean, it's not to jump to it, and we'll go back to it, but just Game of Thrones. The whole season was done before the first one debuted. Yeah. So they already knew that they were kind of fucked from episode 1. Yeah. Like, we've gone off the rails here a bit. Yeah. Well, let's play this bitch out. That's the only option you have. And Endgame was the culmination of 10 years of movies. And the other thing I kept trying to tell people is really Infinity War and Endgame were one very long movie. Yeah. This was a 5-hour-long movie. What you just saw in Endgame was the mid-second act to the end of the movie of a 5-hour-long movie. That's it. Yeah. So yes, it felt like a little weird, but that's because the second act twist was... Yeah. And then it's like... How are they going to get out of this one?
Right.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, that's it. It's a great ending for a movie, but really, if you think about the way the story would be structured, that's the second act twist. Yeah. We thought we had them. We did everything we could. And you're right there. You almost got it. Nope. Done. Yeah. So how are we going to come back from... that's how you build... For those of you who aren't writers, that's how you build the mystique, is that they get to the point where you feel like the story could end here, but for this thing... And now we have to recover from that and build back out toward the conclusion.
I would say this. I felt this way kind of about John Wick too.
John Wick 3, you mean?
John Wick 3, which I'm not going to ruin right now. But
you should go see it.
Yeah, go see it. I mean, there's not really anything to ruin per se, but I mean, like, let me.
Spoiler alert: John shoots a bunch of people. I don't know if that was going to be.
A lot of people die.
There's a body count, and it's real high.
At the end of John Wick, they kind of like end the movie suddenly because the next John Wick Chapter 4 is going to pick up right where Chapter 3 left off, much like Chapter 2 ended, and we picked up right from that point.
Literally the same shot.
You don't feel like you get the whole story. Like there's not a whole story in Chapter 3. It's just more as a way to get you from 2 to 4.
Well, and I feel like there was a whole story.
No, I mean, in Infinity War, I feel like it was like sort of like, this is all the stuff you have to know preparing yourself for Endgame. So if you think about it as like one long 5-hour movie,
right?
It's like you said, like Act 1 is just like all these setting up the fact that we're going to get to this point in Act 3.
Right. First half of Act 2 is now we know who all the characters are and who Thanos is. He's collecting the stones and they're trying to stop him. And then we think they're going to actually do it, but no.
But leaving things kind of open-ended like that sort of make it more difficult to, like, it makes it harder to say you can just watch Infinity War and never watch Endgame.
Here's the thing, though. Is Infinity War a movie that could stand on its own?
Yes, but
it's not a happy ending, and it's not one that makes anybody want to watch more Marvel movies, but it's an ending.
Yeah.
That could be it. That could just be, this is the universe we have to live in now. Half the people are gone.
I mean, I think that in the last 20 years, there's really been a difference between the types of things that we see in movie theaters and the things that we see in television.
Yeah.
And I think that television could always do this, where they give you the cliffhanger.
Right.
And like, it's the end of the season, you know, is Bartlett running for re-election? You know, these sort of things that hang on until the next season, and then you start at that point, you know?
You're canceled. And that's it. That's all you get. Sorry, Veronica Mars fans. You'll never find out what happens.
But I mean, the movies are now, because, you know, sequels are not like laughed at the same way that they used to be.
Yeah.
It's harder for, like, you're going to have sort of this cliffhanger moment from time to time in these movies, but I don't think they work as well in movies as they do in television, where you have so much time you have to fill, you know, like, I mean, there's 21 Marvel movies. So this is basically like a long season of television.
Very long. Yeah. But it really is not, it's an ensemble cast thing where you're telling each episode is a chapter of everyone's life. And then there are the mid-season finale and the finale where everyone comes together. What was the first one? Fuck.
Well, I mean, technically it was Captain America Civil War was the first.
No, but then there wasn't there
of like the Avengers.
I thought there was something else too.
There was an Avengers movie, but I'm saying that happened after Civil War.
Civil War. So Civil War happened and then Avengers. So maybe like sweeps and then the mid-season finale, and then we had another bit of a sweeps with God, no, I guess they didn't really come together again until Infinity War, right?
I mean, there was like people like making, you know, like Hulk was in Thor Ragnarok, and like,
oh yeah, it's like
Iron Man was in Spider-Man,
right?
But there wasn't like ever like a moment where it was like
guest starring T'Challa.
Yeah.
Who is this guy? We didn't even see him in the beginning.
We haven't even met him yet.
He just comes in the middle of the season. Anyway, yeah, but yeah, I think it's good to think about it as one thing. Endgame and Infinity War were one long movie, and this was really one long season of TV where we were building up to these two points. And I know, I don't. It's weird because I don't feel the same way about Chris Evans as I do about Robert Downey Jr. being out of it. Chris Evans is. I mean, he is Captain America. I mean, I see it. I get it. I'm with you. But I could see other people taking that part. Yeah. I don't know that had they casted someone else as Iron Man that we would be here now. Who else do you put in and we're here 10 years later? Because if Iron Man flops, by the way, here's none of this happens.
Here's where I stand on Chris Evans. I think the default on Robert Downey Jr. is higher.
Yeah.
But the really good moments of Chris Evans are better than the really good moments of Robert Downey Jr. Like, and they might be little tiny simple, like,
no, I think you're right.
I love the way when it's when Spider-Man first makes his appearance in like the MCU,
right?
The new Spider-Man with Tom Holland. And it's when all the Avengers are fighting each other.
At the airport, right?
Yeah.
Running towards each other.
Yeah. And there's the one like sort of like constant throwback from the comics of Peter Parker being from Queens and Captain America being from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And how like he's holding it over him. And there was just the one line reading where it's just like, you from New York? It's like Queens. And he like looks, he's like, Brooklyn. And like he nails it. He perfectly nails it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those like RDJ never nailed a line like that. But that's not as big of a like it.
But to be fair, that's not
Robert Downey Jr.
either.
On like a day-to-day was better than Chris Evans, I feel like. But
also it's the characters because Tony Stark, Iron Man are not given that kind of like he is a
no, but I'm saying like
preposterous asshole.
Like when Chris Evans does the like talking to the kids, like like, hey, Captain America here,
right?
Like those types of things where like he nailed those.
So
like,
he
got that character so well.
Hey Cap, get in. We're going to science. Is not the same as Brooklyn.
Yeah,
and walking away.
Right.
Those moments are still yes, but overall, I think I am much sadder about RDJ leaving than I am about Chris Evans leaving. I think that's the only people we are losing in the whole universe.
Yeah, I mean, we
Natasha's
lost some,
gone.
we lost some people in the last run of it that aren't, like fuck, what's his face? Paul Bettany's character.
Oh, yeah. Not Friday. The predecessor.
Because he died when
he pulls the thing out.
Soul Stone came out. Yeah.
Whatever his name is. The robot who's not real. So we lost him. We lost Natasha. Chris Evans is gone as Captain America, but it seems as though Anthony
Mackie
is going to take over as Falcon becomes the new Captain America. The kid, by the way, for those of you who didn't realize, that if you stayed to the end, there was no after credit scene, which was apparently Kevin Feige's way of saying, hey, you were looking forward to the next chapter of this. This is it.
Yeah.
Now we go on to the next book instead of the next chapter.
Right.
But there was the sound that you heard at the end, if you didn't recognize it, was the same sound of Robert Downey Jr. in the cave pounding out the first Iron Man suit. The kid, who you didn't recognize from the final scene, is the same kid from Iron Man 2, when he crashes into the garage and he needs to have a kid help him fix the suit. That's the kid. So I think we're going to learn that kid's going to become the new Iron Man, and we have young Tom Holland. Honestly, they kind of put the young people in charge of the franchise.
Yeah.
Like Tom Holland and that kid become the new Spider-Man and Iron Man, and then Hawkeye's out because he's just out because he's done with this whole life, I think. And Anthony Mackie's, I guess, is a little younger than Chris Evans, maybe.
more affordable, for sure.
For sure, more affordable. Don Cheadle's still in it. He'll just be in it forever. That's fine. I mean, like, you just keep showing up, Don. That's all I really ask.
It's like they just call him. It's just like, hey, you free this summer for a Marvel movie? He's like, yeah, man, I don't got nothing to do.
By the way, best story from the Avengers tour is that Chris
and then the agent calls us. It's like, why'd you accept that? We have plans for this summer. It's just like, whoa.
It's Marvel,
chill out, dude.
Best story from the media tour for Avengers Endgame was Don Cheadle, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans all walking through an amusement park, and someone said, oh my God, you guys are the guys from Marvel. Can I have a picture with you? And they were like, and Robert Downey Jr. is like, yeah, of course. And then he hands the phone to Don Cheadle and says, can you take our picture? Like, no idea who Don Cheadle is. Poor Don Cheadle, who gets no respect. But I mean, it's the shows are going to be about the Scarlet Witch, and it's all the younger people. So, and now X-Men gets to come back in because Fox is back in the fold, and Tom Holland will still be. What's that? Deadpool's in. I don't know. I don't know about the whole Deadpool thing. I don't know if they're going to bring him into.
I would kind of prefer that Deadpool just say separate.
Yeah, you say
he doesn't have to be a part of anything.
I love it. Did you see Deadpool 2? We did.
No.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't.
Okay, so Deadpool 2, there's a moment where
I saw on the basis of sex instead that night.
Yeah. There's a moment where he opens the door and he's like, this big mansion and still nobody here, and he opens the door, but we see all of the first class X-Men in the room.
Yeah.
And then he closes the door. That's all we see. Like the whole joke that they're in the universe, but they're not in the movie or whatever. I like that. Like, just keep him there with a couple of the X-Men and like have him have his adventures. Cable being involved was great.
Yeah.
I don't want to see him in the same place as like Wolverine and like everyone else, really. Like, keep him in his own place. Anyway, we're running really long. I don't want to take just 2 minutes to talk about Game of Thrones. Avengers is great. If you haven't seen it, go see it, because apparently it's not going to hit the #1 movie.
Well, it already did, so.
Oh, did it?
I saw a news story today that it passed.
Okay, well, I guess they're confirming this weekend, and then maybe this weekend got it.
Yeah, maybe.
Good. So go see it. It's an amazing movie, and you should see it. Game of Thrones. Corey didn't watch it because he doesn't watch Game of Thrones. But I
like people to have their fun. And I feel bad that it seems like this season has been so hideously horrible for the Game of Thrones people.
Yeah. There is one meme that I think perfectly describes this season. And Brendan and I were talking about it when he was here. Mm-hmm. It's typically used in the description of when you start a test and when you realize there's 5 minutes left. And it's like a drawing of a horse. And the tail and the back leg are amazing. But then as you move right, it's more of like roughly drawn into a smiley face on the horse. Well, this meme takes that and divides it up into seasons 1 through 4, season 5, season 6 and 7, and season 8. And that's how I feel about this. The two main writers for Game of Thrones are famously involved in the new Star Wars project.
Was it Star Wars or Star Trek? I thought you said it was Trek.
Maybe it is Star Trek. No, I think it's Star Wars. I think they're doing I can't remember. Damn it, I'm a Trekkie and I should know that.
I'll look it up.
I know that they have, it's both of those franchises have movies coming out. One of which is the non-Skywalker Star Wars movies are starting after 9. And then Star Trek is kind of like rebooting the franchise, or they're in the midst of their J.J. Abrams reboot, but J.J. Abrams is producing, not directing anymore. But they're writing. Those two are writing a new movie. And they lost most of their writing staff from season 7 to the Game of Thrones prequels that are now going into production. So you have a new writer's room with these guys who honestly just probably are thinking more about what they're doing next, which is
still getting there. Sorry.
And it was like, hey, we have all of these things. Let's just wrap up these stories as easy as possible. And I found a list, and it really upset me, and I would really, really just like to go, go through the list of things of like, why did all of these things happen? Why did we have any of these things? Because in the end, it seems as though none of these things actually mattered. Here is the list. Dang it. Maybe I don't have it. I have too many screenshots of too many things. That's the end result of my discussion. But like, why did Arya do so much training? Like, again, spoiler alert, again, she killed the Night King, but is that really what all of this was for? Oh, here we go. What was the point of Jon's resurrection? What was the point of Brienne being a major part of Jaime's storyline? What was the point of Jaime leaving Cersei in the first place? What was the point of Cersei's prophecy? What was the point of Jon's true identity? What was the point of having Cersei pregnant? What was the point of Dany turning crazy because of bells? What was the point of the Golden Company? What was the point of hinting at Jon and Dany's relationship? Like, again, this is a short list of a few things that meant nothing by the time we got to the end. And what was... Like,
yeah, it's an untitled Star Wars project, by the way.
Yeah, it's a non-Skywalker.
And then also, it's still listed as here as something that's on the way, as the Confederate thing.
Oh, that's right. They're doing the alternate history Confederacy.
Yeah, like if the Confederacy won or something like that.
By the way, HBO, still have the better script for that. If you really just want to ditch that project and, go with somebody who cares about the shit that they write.
If after the season you're feeling a little bit on the fence about Damon Lindelof.
I got something for you. But nonetheless, my tweet after I watched was, okay, that's an ending. Mm-hmm. Because they ended the show. They wrapped up the storylines as neatly as I suppose they could. Everyone is kind of in a neat little bow. But it's a lot like you buy everyone gifts and then you just blindly wrap them and hand them out to people at Christmas. Like, I bought Corey this particular gift because I thought about him when I bought it. But I'm just going to wrap it up in random paper and on Christmas morning, hand it to somebody.
Like, and then it goes to Rachel.
And Rachel gets it, and you're like, okay, so I get that this is a thing that makes sense in the world, but
no, it's a personalized Orioles jersey for Corey.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that someone snuck up on Dany, realizing that she was about to be a tyrant, and killed her. Well, it seems to me you have a character who, I don't know, trained to be a killer, who had a prophecy about her that she would kill someone with green eyes, and who, without remorse and without fallout, would do that. So let's not use that character. Let's use somebody else. Somebody who we've been building up a love story with this entire time. That makes a lot of sense. And let's build up this prophecy about Cersei and how she is going to die in a certain way, and then completely ignore that.
Let me follow this up with what I feel I can add to this whole conversation, because again, didn't watch Game of Thrones, so I'm not up on all this.
You watched a couple episodes.
The first episode a couple times.
Yeah. Okay.
I have to imagine that there's a difference in how this show is constructed just because of how much time George R.R. Martin takes to write these books.
Right.
And the fact that they've shot how many seasons since they split from 4 seasons?
The first 4 seasons of the books, the last 4 seasons are not.
Right. So they've managed to get out 4 seasons of television in the amount of time that it's taken him to not even finish writing The most recent book? Like,
to be fair, I do say that HBO did what they could. He said he has 6 books in the series. He's written 4. I think it's 6 and 4. He's written 4 and there are 6. So had at the time that they purchased the rights, he stayed on the same pace of writing, he would have finished before they got the movies. So it's like a J.K. Rowling, like Harry Potter situation.
Right.
Where we start production before the last book's out, but it'll be done way before we get there, the movies.
Yeah.
And then George R. Martin has just taken 8 years to write the last couple of these books.
But I mean, like, when you're a novelist and there's no reason that you have to have something out in a certain amount of time. Nope. Unless, you need money. Like, that's why most novelists do. Like,
by the way, he gets money from the show, even if he thinks it's shitty. So he's got his HBO money. Who cares?
I think that I don't know him, but I imagine that part of the reason why he probably takes so long is because he's really spending time thinking about all these things so that he doesn't disappoint people. And from everything I've heard from people who read the books, they're very thorough and they're very well thought out. And it's clear that he just has like a huge whiteboard somewhere in his house where he has all these points just like written up there and he knows what's going on. And it's just not when you're, I mean, you could just say from continuity standpoint that it's harder to make the television show because Starbucks cups and water bottles are ending up in shots on the show.
Yeah.
But I mean, like it's really harder to make a television show because you have to shoot things out of order and you don't know when things are going to, like, how this episode is necessarily going to look in the edit and blah, 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 blah. Like,
I think though it comes down to writing, and that's what you and I have the ability to look at and say that they just got lazy with the writing this. And I mean, you haven't seen it, but the writing got really lazy this year. Right.
But I'm saying, like, I think part of the reason why somebody might be able to point at something and say lazy writing is because they're not necessarily thinking about, like, oh, George R. Martin could just say, I don't want to write this week. I'm not feeling like it. And there's no punishment for that.
Right.
But I mean, if, the Game of Thrones writer's room was just like, hey, listen, none of us really have it this week. We're going to delay writing for another week before we start this whole thing. Then HBO would be like, motherfucker, we have to have this thing up in September.
See, but here's my, so there was the one thing that was very George R. Martin like in the series thus far, I think, is Arya showing up to kill the Night King. Because what he does is he jumps around between characters, which, by the way, slight inspiration for me was I didn't read the whole book because I didn't really get into the fantasy aspects. Now that I've seen it, I think I'll get into it a little more, and I'll read all of the books once he finishes. But I also hate getting to a point in a series that I caught up to the author and being like, give me the next fucking book, man. Like, what are you doing? But he jumps around so much, and then you forget, like, oh, we haven't seen this person in a while. And all of a sudden, like, bam, there they are.
Yeah.
And right when you weren't expecting them, they're in there and they surprise you. The Red Wedding's another one where you're like, okay, so there's a lot of major characters here. I feel like peace is coming, like something. Nope, we're done. Like everything's done. And I think like that is good writing. But they said that they knew what was going to happen this season 3 years ago. 3 years ago, they had written out the plot of this season and the seasons before. So don't tell me it's because they didn't have an idea of what they were doing. They knew 3 years ago, but they got lazy on the details. And then they're like, hey, so we got an outline. Let's just shoot the outline. I feel like we hit the major plot points here. I know we were going to do 12. Let's just do 6 instead. Also, we're going to shoot the plot outline.
One other thing, and this isn't complaining about fans because fans are going to be fans.
Yeah.
But I think you have to, if you're writing a show like Game of Thrones, much like if, I got hired to write a Star Wars movie or something like that.
Don't hire him to write Star Wars. He's never seen Star Wars.
I don't know what would be good about it. But I'm saying like
I asked him about the hero's arc the other day. You had no idea.
If somebody was hypothetically going to hire me for a Star Wars movie, you know what my first move would be? First of all, watch all the fucking movies.
Yeah.
Second of all, I would probably spend a lot of time trying to figure out what fans of the show really enjoy and like what parts of this they really want more of and stuff, and like try and write something that I think the fans would like. And it seems like this season of Game of Thrones is sort of not doing that. Like it wasn't taking the fans into consideration, and knowing that regardless of how well even if this is the most perfect season of television ever, there was going to be 15% of people who are going to complain no matter what, even if it was 100% perfect. And there's no way of avoiding that. So you have to just sort of like let the fans be your guide into which way you feel like you should go, especially if you're going off book from what George R.R. Martin started with.
Yeah. I do feel like, though, that is an interesting point, because I think when they went into season 5 and they said, we're out of books.
I would not write a Star Wars movie where it turned out like Luke was gay or something like that.
Not
like,
the fan base.
It's not like nobody would appreciate that I did that. So I would not do it. Like,
but I think that you make an interesting point, because I think season 5, when the first time they were off book, that they looked at season 4 and they said, what do the fans like about this show? And they guessed wrong. And that skewed us off already, starting in 5, and we didn't really notice it in 5. And even in 6, we didn't notice it so much. But by the time we got to late 6, early 7, we realized how far we were skewing off from this storyline that he set up. Because my biggest argument about this is this season was out of order. That George has been setting up the fight with the others to be the big thing that happens in his series, and that this storyline about humans or men fighting about each other and the Game of Thrones itself is subtext to this greater fight. That, yeah, you guys are playing this Game of Thrones, but there is this threat coming, which we call the Whites in the show, but he doesn't actually name in the book. And like, the White Walkers are coming. That's the big threat, and that this game really needs to be subservient to that. What I think the writers did is they said they really like this story about the families fighting amongst each other and power, and it's called Game of Thrones. The Game of Thrones should be the No, dummy. The Game of Thrones is the subtext to say, why are we fighting amongst I mean, at the end of the episode, they get to it a little bit, because they're like, we don't need to be fighting like this anymore. You're right. But I think that George would have written it the other way, that there would have been a fight with Cersei, there would have stormed King's Landing. Once half of men are dead, and they finally have to come to the point where, like, let's elect a leader. Then they do. Great. Now, because we've been so dumb and fought each other, now we have to turn our depleted forces and go north and go fight the others.
Yeah.
And this is the lesson, that you would have been stronger had you stuck together, but because you fought each other first, now this existential threat's coming and it's going to finish you off. And I think that is what he would have done, and the message is always about that. The existential threat versus us infighting, and what they said is, that's not what they like. They like the families fighting amongst each other, and like Cersei being like a bitch and like really hating people, and this force from the east coming in and like, no, all of that was leading up to, why were you fighting amongst yourselves? There's this big problem coming.
Yeah. You know, to put one final sort of point on this, I think that I guess what I don't understand is it feels like philosophically the show is different.
It is.
Than it was before.
It is.
And this has to happen a lot in all kinds of different shows, but it feels like they sort of missed the mark. Like when, I brought up the West Wing earlier, but I'm saying like when it was close to, Bartlett's going to be out of office. Mm-hmm. So we have to find a new president. The last 2 seasons of the West Wing is more about the people who are running for president than it is about the actual West Wing.
Yeah.
But that's sort of where they had to go, because that's how it would be like in real politics. Like you wouldn't care about, what Trump's doing in his last 18 months in office if he was, in his second term. Obama, his last 18 months, you didn't care so much about the day-to-day. You cared more about the election that was coming up.
Right.
And I think there was something that was missing here about that with the Game of Thrones people, where like they knew the pivot was coming, but they didn't handle the pivot correctly. And I one other thing, and I know this is weird, like so like the idea of fight or flight, right? Like there's some people who are going to run from trouble. There's some people who are going to like face it head of steam. I think like John Wick is like the fight version of that, John Wick is the guy who's not going to worry about it. He's going to run in there, guns a-blazing, and shoot everybody. And even people who are naturally within themselves a flight over fight kind of person could watch it and identify with being John Wick and being talented enough to be the fighter.
Yeah.
And go like, yeah, if I was like him,
I would be.
If I had that talent to shoot, I would be just like him, mowing people down throughout every room. And I think that there's sort of that thing that's going on with Game of Thrones fans too, where they're just like, well, I wouldn't kill my sister.
Yeah.
But like if I was Jon Snow, you know, like whatever. I obviously throwing out random characters and I don't know what they tie together. But like, you know, like if I was him, then I definitely would because I would be in this situation. And it seems like from what I'm hearing from people in the last couple seasons, there wasn't any like, I can see how I would put myself in the position of a certain character. Like the character on its base has sort of changed so much that they're not the same person. Like,
and that's hard.
It's not like me visualizing myself as the killer that John Wick is in this particular situation of the movie.
Right. And there are moments of that. There are moments of that with John especially, but other characters, I think we lost it. But I think your West Wing point is the most important one. When Sorkin leaves, the tone of the show changes.
Yeah.
And I've compared this season of Game of Thrones to Lost and Dexter, both of which had big turnover in their writer's room for their last season or two. And my argument for why the writers have checked out is exactly that. When Sorkin left, when the writers for Lost left, and when the writers for Dexter left, and they had to kind of change their rooms over, those people who came in had no idea how to capture the tone of the people before.
Yeah.
And these are the same two lead writers, which just tells me I don't feel like they were in the room.
Well, I mean, like in the later West Wing too, like post Sorkin West Wing, like you could see people were trying to write like Sorkin.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And it's one of those things like you would hear it and you'd be like, it sounds familiar, but it doesn't sound as pithy and like there's a reason why you can tell why Aaron Sorkin gets all the money and people who write like Aaron Sorkin don't necessarily get the same amount of money. Because
you juxtapose that to Breaking Bad, where Vince Gilligan had 3 or 4 shows on the air by the end of Breaking Bad, and he was running around to room after room after room. But Breaking Bad was good until the last drop, and the last line was just as good as his first episode. But he was working on Better Call Saul, which had a different feel than Breaking Bad, and both of them kept their different feels while he was working on 2 different projects. And his producing on 2 other things, where I think he wasn't actually running the rooms, he was just producing them, but he was involved.
Yeah,
they all felt different, and that's the difference between the writers here and Vince Gilligan running Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Just being able to say, I can do all of this, and I can keep the tone the same. Is everything.
Yeah.
And Sorkin did it, and when he left, we saw it. And these guys are still there. They're the middle ground. Vince Gilligan stays in, and it sounds the same all the way to the end. Sorkin leaves, it changes. These guys stayed, but because they had checked out, I think, it changed. So it's unfortunate. I know there's a petition to redo season 8. By the way, that's not going to happen. I think we're much more likely to see like
I think we're more likely to see the George R.R. Martin remix of the seasons that would come following season 4.
Yeah.
Probably with new people though.
Yeah, no,
like,
it's going to be years in the future.
They wouldn't be able to afford Amelia Clark like 10 years from now when they eventually go to shoot it.
But when he finishes the books, I think we're going to have...
It'll just be like one of those things like you go like, oh, so Mark Ruffalo's Hulk now.
Yeah. No, good. But
all right,
I mean, honestly,
sure.
there will be...
Oh, Jon Snow's Brandon Fraser now. All right.
If they are smart, when he let him finish all of them first. Let him finish all of them. And when they're done, then come back in and like pick up book, I think it's book 5 or book 6, whatever it is, and do an intro episode where it's like, hey, there's a really short guy. This is Tyrion.
Yeah.
And hey, blonde girl. She has dragons. This is Daenerys. And like, we'll do like an awkward reintroducing everyone because everyone will be too old. And then let's go on with the story and tell what George R.R. Martin, because I can't imagine it is any worse than the first 4. He's putting so much time and effort in. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
And we'll just have an alternate ending, basically. It'll be like, here's the 2. It starts in the same 4 and then skews off. And one is the TV only and the other one's George R.R. Martin. So,
sorry. I swear to God, this is my last point, and then we'll go. The baseline of everyone is they don't want to write.
Yeah.
Professional writers do not want to write most of the time. We force ourselves to sit in front of the keyboard and just do it.
Non-professional writers do not want to write. We hate the fact that we want to write.
Yeah. So I feel bad about picking on other people who are not only forcing themselves to write because they have to get something done in time, but also like knowing that every single one of their decisions is going to be destroyed by the internet on a weekly basis. That's a very hard position to find yourself in. And how many people out there, show of hands, would want to be Game 7 of the World Series, bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, runner on second, full count. Here's the pitch. Like
John Wick would. John Wick
99.99% of people do not want to be that person.
No.
You know, sometimes you're putting these people in the position where they're going to be that person and they're not up for it. And it's not their fault because most people aren't up for it.
Well, I mean, I think the difference though is if I was in season 7 of Uprising, season 7 of Uprising, and it's like, hey, so we could either move on to Seattle or we could just kind of like wrap it up right here and like just call it. But like, I feel like I wouldn't be thinking about like, okay, so I got this other show that's coming up and I got it, and we got to strike while the iron's hot, because if you're out of this town for 4 months, you might as well be out for a lifetime. So I gotta, because that's my baby, I gotta make it the best thing that and I think maybe that's the Vince Gilligan in me. That's like, I got to make this thing, even if I don't work again, this is going to be my swan song and I got to make it that. And you know what? These guys, they don't give a fuck what we think. Honestly, like they're driving their season 6 Maserati to their season 7 house. And eventually they're going to take a little break to their season 8 beach house, in the Maldives. And and they got their Star Wars jet that's going to fly them there, and their Confederacy fucking beach towels or whatever bit of money they got for that bullshit. It's probably not going to come out. Like, they don't care. I will care. And you're right that, I mean, far be it from us to be in that position, but God help me, I wish I could ever be in that position. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing, is I will let people, dear universe, I will let people tear me apart on Twitter if you just get me a syndicated show, please.
Just give me 100 episodes of something.
Just 100 episodes. I mean, it doesn't even have to be 100 now. Just 25 episodes of something. Or
just enough for make Netflix interested.
Just get me on premium cable somewhere, some kind of premium service, and I'll let them tear me apart. I'll engage them so they make it worse. Yeah, please.
All right. Well, in the meantime, you know who gets ripped on? You know who gets ripped on Twitter even without the fame?
Who's that?
Oh, theanthem.com, Gordon. Theanthem.com with The Anthem on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the listener line, 443-219-7595.
What's that number again?
443-219-7595. And you can find more of me at my website, CoreyBakerFilmmaker.com. I just finished the John Wick 3 review. It is waiting for me to cross the T's and dot the I's. And that will be up later tonight. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, tomorrow would probably be the time you'd be watching it.
What's up next?
I want to see A Dog's Journey this week. So maybe Wednesday, I'm going to go date night with Rachel and go see it.
I was going to say, you can see that yourself. I'm not in for that one.
But maybe I'll do that one Thursday. We'll sort of see how it goes. I gotta be on set Tuesday and Thursday. So
okay.
It's weighing on my ability to handle that for sure by Thursday, but we'll see what happens.
Life getting in the way of the projects. Well, of course, you can find more of me at Robert N. Cheek on all your social networks. Make sure you check out robertncheek.com, where you can find links to my political blog, news website, and the books, which are available on Amazon.
Buy those books.
Especially the books, because the books are the only thing up and running on the website. So go and check that out. But thank you. Anyway.
Well, I think we've done good here tonight.
We've done something. We've spoiled Avengers. We've spoiled Game of Thrones. We've spoiled abortion advocates. We've spoiled billionaires. We've spoiled... good Lord. Yeah. We've done something. I don't know if it's good. But as always, you're listening to the O The Anthem podcast, part of the O The Anthem digital network. For Corey, this is Rob. Have a great week, everybody.
All right, now I got to go take a Game of Thrones season 8. I mean, a piss.
Oh. Ooh.